The Mark Twain National Forest is a home to some of the creepiest mysteries in our country, from supposed hellhound sightings to apparitions, strange activity in the sky, and missing persons, and much more. This national forest will terrify you. Visit at your own risk. The Mark Twain National Forest is nestled in the southern part of Missouri. This national forest covers over 3 million acres of pure wilderness. It is a massive area full of streams, hiking trails, over 500 caves, and other regions of exploration. This is why it's no surprise the national forest receives millions of visitors during the year. However, there has long been lore surrounding the Mark Twain National Forest. It is an expansive and lush area of wilderness, one that has been the topic of a number of mysteries and strange paranormal theories. One of the most pressing questions surrounding this national forest is the presence of otherworldly creatures, known as hellhounds. Hellhounds, which have also been referred to as werewolves, are large canine-like creatures. They are often regarded as guardians and are often said to come from another dimension. Hellhounds have a very distinct set of characteristics. They are fast, aggressive, and larger than a bear or a dog, which is why many eyewitnesses who have seen these hellhounds deny confusing them with an innocent bear or dog. Hellhounds have red eyes and are large in stature, usually covered with black matted fur. These creatures have been sighted in the Mark Twain National Forest by many a weary hiker or an individual looking to enjoy the passages of the area. The sightings of these hellhounds have now been numerous, and there has now been a reputation built up in the forest because of them. From several eyewitness accounts that we will look at now, it is obvious these sinister beings may be stalking unsuspecting visitors of the park, and not even daylight wards them off. One account of a hellhound sighting occurred in broad daylight when a hiker trekking through the forest began to hear something pushing through the thick brush and branches. The forest had gone eerily silent, and there were no other hikers around. The hiker recounts this: "It was only when I came to a meadow that it came out into the open. What I saw was a very large black dog-like creature. It looked sort of like a Malamute, but it was all black and thickly built. I mean, this thing was jacked." The hiker described how the creature's head hung low and emitted a strange chuffing sound. Though the being raised its head and definitely noticed the hiker, without so much as a snort, it took off into the forest again. In November of 2019, another potential hellhound sighting was recorded from a site called Jake Trost Photo. The witness had gone into the forest at night with the mission to photograph the night sky from one of the lakes in the area. He'd driven through a patch of forest until reaching his destination and an abandoned campground overrun with weeds and brush. From there, he planned to hike to the lake he would complete his photography at. The witness remembered hearing splashing coming from the lake he was journeying to. Though the sounds had ceased, the photographer couldn't help but feel like he was being watched. He chalked the sounds up to it being a deer or another wild animal and began his hike to the lake. Having gotten to the lake, he noticed there was a thin sheet of ice covering the water. This begged the question, how had that animal heard splashing around minutes before, not broken through the ice? It was still fully intact. He stated this: "I'm a very rational human being, but this, without question, made me feel a bit vulnerable." The splashing sounded again, and the witness of this sighting stresses that the lake is really not that big. Instead, it is more like a large pond. And this time, the splashing was coming from across the lake. The lake was still completely covered in ice. The photographer wore a headlamp, but even though it reached pretty much the entirety of the lake, he still saw nothing. Laughter began to sound from his left. Then there was a loud splash like somebody had thrown a large ball-shaped rock into the lake. Still, the witness saw nothing, followed by more chuckling. Not coyotes, not human, I've never heard a chuckle like that. It was maniacal. His back was to the trees of the forest, and suddenly he felt an ice-cold chill run through his spine and to his neck. He felt somebody was watching him. It feels as if something is piercing me, staring into my soul. There was a rippling sound in the water going straight toward him. Something was swimming in his direction. even though he could not see it in the lake and there were no cracks or breaks in the ice layered over the body of water. The photographer managed to snap 2 photos before a loud splash and a flutter sounded in the lake. A being shot out of the lake and was going straight toward him. Mustering up the courage, the witness brought out a small knife he had on him and pointed it towards the creature. The man yelled, but just like that, the being suddenly vanished. All was quiet. Too quiet. The witness grabbed his gear, runs back to his vehicle, leaving the forest and vowing to never return. This last account I will go into was shared on Reddit by a user named Dubious Circle. This Redditor and his dad had gone to the Mark Twain National Forest for a stay at their hunting cabin. Father and son arrived and started up the cabin's generator, setting up deer blinds. While setting up deer blinds, the witness felt he was being watched and heard a crashing sound as something in the opposite direction ran away. He and his father shared a laugh, putting it down to a scared deer. That same night, around 9 p.m., both the witness and his father settled in for the night, only to be woken up around 1:30 in the morning by the sound of something crashing against the cabin. It was a one-time crash, as when the pair had fully woken up, they did not hear anything again. A quick investigation outside yielded nothing either, so they went back to sleep, woke up at 5 a.m. to try out the deer blinds. While the witness was hanging out in the deer blind, he heard a rustle coming from his right. And standing no more than 25 feet from him was a huge, upright creature covered in reddish-brown hair staring right back at him. Its face looked so mean, but it was no human. It was roughly 7 feet tall or more, huge and massive. I cannot emphasize enough the size of this thing. The witness was, of course, rightly terrified. The creature vanished into the brush, and the young man began to make his way back to the cabin. What followed would be a terrifying pursuit. As he walked, the witness began to note that he was being followed, no doubt by the creature. In what he refers to as a regrettable choice, he turns and fires a shot in the direction of the noises following him. The creature lets out a horrible screaming wail, and the chase begins. The witness details his harrowing sprint as he tried to lose the otherworldly being that was chasing him down. He never turned back to look at the creature, but he described that it sounded like the being was knocking down trees as it chased him. The witness and his father had brought a four-wheeler to the forest, and this would be what ultimately saved him from this horrifying chase. As he ran from the creature, the witness's father appears on the four-wheeler. The Redditor concluded his encounter by being grateful that his father appeared then, as he did not think he'd be around to tell his encounter had he not shown up. Since then, the young man has not been weary of going into the woods and has not returned to his cabin at the Mark Twain National Forest. You may have heard about Bigfoot sightings in other national forests, and the Mark Twain National Forest is clearly no exception. There have been repeated sightings of the Sasquatch by many of the forest's visitors. In March of 2019, a member of the Lowlands Bigfoot Research Group and 2 other researchers stayed a couple of days in the Mark Twain National Forest. Their field report about the area can be found online. But to get to the good stuff, it has been reported that during their stay, they saw a variety of red and white lights blinking throughout the forest. These lights could not be contributed to stars as they would flash among the trees and brush. One researcher actually stayed in the car to warm up while the other 2 explored, and she reported shuffling sounds that she initially thought were her peers coming up to check on her. The other 2 researchers were doing their own excursion, so the source for these shuffling sounds could not have been them. During their last night in the forest, they were met with rocks being thrown on the path they walked, a common occurrence in other Bigfoot sightings. There was also an incident where one of the researchers threw a rock into a nearby lake, and they heard something large splashing around that couldn't be a small animal. In 2021, the YouTube channel Sasquatch Theory uploaded a documentary focusing on Bigfoot sightings in Missouri, particularly and specifically the Mark Twain National Forest. One man who was driving through the area in 2018 came to a screeching halt when a creature who was brown as a paper sack with long black hair and black feet walked right across the road, jumping into a nearby ditch. Not only is Mark Twain National Forest known for a medley of strange creature sightings, but it is also the spot where many optimistic visitors vanish into thin air. Their loved ones are scratching their heads and left trying to find them, but it seems like these weary travelers are lost within the trees and thick brush, never to be seen or heard from ever again. Many people go missing every day. It is a common fact. Looking at the statistics presented by the NAMUS, also known as the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, there are about 600,000 people that go missing in the US every year. However, the statistics for how many people go missing in national parks is something to think about. According to a journalist who investigates disappearances, around 1,600 or more go missing on public lands that defy any easy explanation. Oftentimes, some incidents may go unreported, so the number may even be greater than that. There was even an attempt in the early 2000s to create a database called the Incident Management Analysis and Reporting System. This kept track of law enforcement cases in lands run by the National Park Service of Land Management and other organizations like it. However, this database is very flawed, so it is rarely ever utilized as it should be. What can be the reasons people go missing in national parks? There can be a variety of explanations, some that are rational and others that could take an open mind to fully understand. Mark Twain is and has been the setting for a number of strange circumstances when it comes to the disappearances of individuals. Let's take a look at some of the most well-known missing person cases to occur in this area. For example, like Robert C. Garman, who was last spotted at a party in the Mark Twain Forest on September 24, 1996. He and a female friend had been visiting friends in the area when they joined the party. This was by no means a large party, as there were about 15 guests in total. The party lasted a few days, but Garman would not be leaving the grounds afterward. After arguing with a male and a female acquaintance, Garman and the female friend he had initially come with broke away from the party and wandered to a wooded campground area. This would be the last time anybody would see Garman again. The pair was reported missing shortly after that. A few days later, horseback riders stumbled across Garman's female friend. She was badly disoriented and claimed Garman was killed. However, Garman has since never been found. Where is Garman now, and is he deceased or alive? David Heitman was last seen in Columbia, Missouri on April 19, 2016. He had been in contact with his social worker that day and had relayed that he would be going out to the lake with a friend. On June 23rd, the same social worker would conduct a home visit and find the house to be completely empty. In October of that same year, a hunter would find a bag of Heitman's clothing and identifying documents in the Mark Twain National Forest. The bag was about 2 miles from the roadway and about 100 miles from the town of Columbia. Though a ground search was conducted in the area for Heitman, nothing was found. Since then, David Heitman has not been seen or heard from. For his belongings to be found in the area, this suggests Heitman did make it to the Mark Twain National Forest. What really happened in the area and what became of David Heitman? Some of us have particular routes in our street or town that we enjoy walking. This would be the case for Robert Leslie Huddleston. Last seen on July 31st, 2017, Huddleston was last seen walking along the trails of the Mark Twain National Forest. Huddleston frequented these trails a lot, especially since they were across from his house. A search party walked through the same trails Huddleston would go through and discovered nothing. Authorities found Huddleston's car and belongings where they always were at his home. This missing person case remains unsolved to this day. One of the most recent missing person cases to connect to the Mark Twain National Forest is that of a young father, Patrick Chapman. Last seen on May 1st, 2020, at a family's friend's house in Mill Spring, Missouri, Patrick was not seen or heard from again until the discovery of his vehicle on May 29th. The vehicle was found abandoned on a four-wheeler path in an area of the Mark Twain National Forest covered with dense, thick woods. The car was in very subpar condition, heavy damage to the bumper, and all tires completely flattened. Inside the vehicle were items such as Chapman's wallet, medication, and other miscellaneous belongings. his car keys and cell phone were not found. Because Patrick was known to go camping or stay with friends, he was not reported missing until later. His whereabouts still remain unknown. It's no secret this national forest extends for miles. To get an idea of all the oddities that have occurred in this public land, we should get a better understanding of where the forest stands first. This doesn't necessarily mean a geography lesson. Instead, let's look at some of the history behind Mark Twain, and some of the discoveries made on the land. You may have heard of the New Madrid seismic zone, also known as the New Madrid Fault. If you haven't, here's a quick rundown to refresh your memory. Between December 1811 and March of 1812, a series of violent earthquakes and tremors, the most violent in all U.S. history to be exact, rocked the area near present-day Missouri. These earthquakes were so jarring that they actually caused a fluvial tsunami in the Mississippi River, which occurs when water flows completely backward and back to where it came from. The death toll after these earthquakes falls somewhere along the thousands, although this number may also be misrepresented due to the overall lack of reporting deaths in Native American communities at the time. These earthquakes were a direct result of the New Madrid seismic zone. It is actually the most active seismic area in the entirety of the United States, and when it comes to the future earthquakes, many researchers consider the New Madrid seismic zone to set off an earthquake much like the big one, predicted to hit California in the future. But where exactly does the New Madrid seismic zone run? You guessed it, the New Madrid seismic zone runs all along the Mark Twain National Forest. It is a seismic zone filled with pent-up energy, so it's safe to say this energy may run all along the forest land more than we realized. Such strange occurrences are reported in the Mark Twain National Forest that it may not be surprising to learn that there were even mystery mounds found on these lands and all along the south. A local story in the area, the Missouri Mystery Mound in the Mark Twain National Forest is a man-made mound in the ground with a number of interconnected passages. So, long story short, these underground passages were once claimed to be a form of Hall of Records. But for what exactly? The answer is unclear. The discovery of this mystery mound begins with Charles Teague. Teague, who has a vast interest in archaeology, was listening to a radio interview with a Native American shaman in the early 90s. The shaman was explaining to the radio host that a native guide had shown him temples and artifacts that were more than 10,000 years old. Teague's desire to find this place became obsessive. The shaman had said he was blindfolded when taken to this place. That's just how sacred it was. But he could just about place where it was. Teague had been enrolled in a course in reverse speech technology at the time, and he recorded the interview to try and find a location with the use of reverse speech technology. Teague mentions in an interview, he said, near the fault in America and the forest in the mountains. I said it was the New Madrid Fault. It couldn't be anywhere else. As you may remember, the New Madrid Fault runs along the Mark Twain. However, studying maps didn't yield the answers Teague had wanted. He soon left the search alone as it had gotten difficult to now decipher. While attending a presentation on historical American peacemakers, Teague was struck with the answer to what he had been looking for. Here's a quick history bit. Colonel George Morgan organized a peace agreement between the revolutionaries and American natives during the Revolutionary War. After the war had ended, George Morgan was given a job by George Washington and Thomas Jefferson to map out Spanish territories from the Mississippi River, Ohio Valley, and surrounding areas. Morgan went to southeast Missouri, founded a city named New Madrid, and then retired to an estate in New Jersey to live the life of a millionaire. To Teague, this did not add up. How did Colonel George Morgan go from a territory mapping expedition to retiring to an estate as a millionaire? While looking at Morgan's coat of arms in a biography, Teague noticed there was a box in the left-hand corner that made no sense. After further studying, Teague was astounded to discover it was a grid map. A map that no doubt led to the area where Colonel Morgan had founded the treasures that allowed him to become a millionaire. After this discovery, Teague, his wife, and their daughter drove from Tennessee to Missouri on the hunt for this mysterious location. Their first trip unsuccessful. But Teague later went with a group of local natives and his brother to stumble upon what he believed to be what they were searching for. They found a circular path, and after following it, stumbled on a rock formation that his brother pointed out looked like a lizard. This is exactly what Teague was looking for. They climbed up the hill where this discovery was made and stumbled upon caves. These weren't just any caves though, they were caves with ancient carvings and what Teague calls the wall, which had a giant skull carved into it. Teague said, "It has all the esoteric carving in it, an ancient god, Saturn. There was an entrance there, but we didn't open it or we'd be dead." Teague later went back to the wall with a friend, and while studying the area, Teague stated that two men appeared out of nowhere and invited them to explore a nearby cave with them. Teague agreed, but he and his friend slipped away to their vehicle when the men walked away. Teague was certain going with the men would be a fatal mistake. The thing about the wall, I thought something important was in it. Whatever the wall is, they protect it for some reason. I think that's where the entrance is. Describing the carvings he'd seen at the site, Teague remembered seeing an ape, an elephant, a lion, and a humanoid reptilian. "It's a reptilian god, a god they worship," he said. He also described a carving of a gray alien figure pointing to a star. That was a cave entrance. If you go into that cave, you'll find out the secret of the star, where it or he came from. However, Teague said the Corps of Engineers had built a new road and gotten rid of the cave. He thought the other entrance would be at the shaft, which is a vertical stone well shrouded by thick trees. Unfortunately, Teague himself tried to access the shaft and saw that it was completely rendered inaccessible by debris. He reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers and described his experience and the carvings he saw on the wall. The man Teague came in contact with was too interested. Teague recalled the details of their conversation. He said, "This thing's great. Get your family and all your friends and take us up to the forest and take us to this wall." So I said, "Sure, I'll never go back there again." I knew exactly what was planned. I could see the headline now. UFO cult comes into the backwoods of Missouri and commits suicide. You could see where that was going. What were some of the Teague's stories regarding the site? He was sure that the Army Corps of Engineers knew about the site, but would not call it a government cover-up. Teague concluded his findings and thoughts by saying, "I think the people in the backwoods have been protecting this place since people have been there. I think it may be a pagan cult from long ago." However, Teague also has a more otherworldly theory concerning the elaborate carvings on the wall he saw during his excursions. Carve mountains and valley. We couldn't do that. It's not natural, it's alien formed. I'm convinced of that. So, are all the mysteries in the Mark Twain National Forest connected somehow? Are the hellhounds that have been spotted by many visitors of the forest guarding something? Would it have to do with the mystery mounds that Charles Teague speculates may be part of an ancient pagan cult or something not of this world? What has become of the people who went into the Mark Twain and were never seen or heard from again? So many questions, who knows if the answers will ever be made known? More importantly, I want to know what you guys think. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from all of you. Also, if you're a fan of storytelling of the mysterious and supernatural, be sure to go ahead and smack that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. As always, I love you all, keep an open mind, and I'll catch you guys in the very next video.